Hey everybody, welcome back to Framework Films. I'm Mike Lindell, and today I'm going to show you how I store all of my time-lapse sequences and how best to flow your data between 3 different hard drives for faster render times. And I'll show you in my Lightroom catalogs how I keep every single time-lapse in one specific folder, one folder per time-lapse. That way it's really easy to find them when you're in LRTimelapse as an interface. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start with opening up Lightroom. I'm holding down the Alt key option if you're on a Mac, and you can immediately see that I have a couple different Lightroom catalogs. So I kind of organize my Lightroom infrastructure based on the time frame that I've shot all of that content and data. So you can see my first Lightroom catalog is all the way back from 2011, going forward until October 2018. And that's when I was still kind of learning about the best data storage practices and how many files a Lightroom catalog can really contain without or until it kind of gets too slow to crank through the information. So let me go ahead and open up this Lightroom catalog number 2. It goes from October 2018 to September 2019. And you can immediately see that, first I organize it by camera. So I have an A and a B folder. A is my D750. I used to shoot on a Nikon. B is my A7 III. I'm currently shooting on Sony. And in this Lightroom catalog, I only have 2 different cameras for this catalog. So we can actually go ahead and look. I'm curious to see if we find maybe like a time lapse that I've already rendered from Banff. It's out in the Canadian Rocky Mountains. We can go ahead and look at Peyto Lake in the Icefields Parkway. And you can see every single folder is organized by the destination that I went to. So in this case, I put all my time lapses as Peyto Lake was a destination. It was the 3rd destination in this sequence, but my time lapses, I kind of name them as a naming convention, 3.1, because it's the 3rd destination, which was Peyto Lake, time lapse, TL, and 3.1, just so that it still kind of follows the alphabetical and numerical order. So here you can see I have one folder for one time-lapse sequence. There are 250 frames in this one time-lapse sequence, right? And the reason why you want all of your time-lapse files, all of your images in the sequence in one folder, is so LRTimelapse can actually go ahead and figure out what that sequence is, right? So imagine if I tried to load a time-lapse from like a hodgepodge, a miscellaneous folder full of all this other stuff. So if we look at this miscellaneous folder here, it's just a folder full of images. There are only 37 images, but this is not a time-lapse sequence, right? It could be horizontal, vertical images. And if I hit the play button, you can see like this is not a sequence, but it's part of the destination. So that's like an easier method for me to understand which one folder has my time-lapse sequence in it. Right, so I go with a naming convention of 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4. Let's say I had 4 time lapses here, right? TL to me indicates time lapse and the location at Peyto Lake, right? So when we hit play, we can go ahead and play that time lapse. I actually already colored this and rendered it out, just in my personal time. That wasn't a video or anything. So yeah, so that's kind of like my naming convention in Lightroom. Right, you can see I have destination Banff, right, in my Sony A7 III folder. And then all the time lapses that come with it, 7.1 at Baker Lake, 7.2 at Baker Lake, right? I colored these already as well, so we can go ahead and open those. 7.1 TL overnight hike Baker Lake, 7.2 TL overnight hike Baker Lake, right? So I can click on it and LRTimelapse will just load it, right? These have already been colored. But this is the easiest method for me that I've found, and I'm hoping that you find it useful too. The easiest method to organize all of your information, all of your time-lapse sequences. Otherwise, it can get kind of messy, so I can kind of scrub through and play that one as well. One thing too is it gets so difficult to keep track of everything that you've ever shot. And take it from me, I've shot hundreds of time-lapses housing more than 160,000 photos and video files across what could theoretically be about 90,000 time-lapse like images in sequence. So 90,000 still images across hundreds of time lapses. all equating to about 4.2 terabytes of information across these 4 different Lightroom catalogs that I just showed you. And that can be at first kind of mind-boggling to like have to figure out where to store that information, how to like figure out the best way to optimize your workflow to make sure that you're not using slow hard drives for processing and to make sure you're not using fast hard drives for storing, right? So again, we can take a look at another Lightroom catalog that I have, right? And I'll go ahead and open up Lightroom, hold down Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, and it should pop up with this screen, right? We can go ahead and look at Lightroom catalog number 4, which is September 2019 to the present. And you'll see a very similar naming convention. I try to keep all of my catalogs at about 50,000 to 70,000 files. I found that when I was still on a MacBook Pro, I was slowing down at like 20,000 files. It's going to change based on the computer that you're working on. This computer that I'm working on, it's kind of a beast. I built it myself. There's like 12 terabytes of storage in it, 64 gigabytes of RAM, an i9 processor. I got some goodies in this computer, so I can kind of flex that number up a little bit, but feel it out on your own computer when your Lightroom starts slowing down. Super easy, just create a new catalog and house your newer files in a different catalog, in a different folder structure, and keep them next to each other. Make sure that you're organizing your information in the right way. Right, so if we look at when I was out in Mexico, right, I hit the Soy Tune Cenote a couple times. I have 5 of these time lapses, right, 4.1 through 4.5. They're all organized based on the chronology of when they were shot, right, and the destination is, you know, in this specific catalog, Mexico was the 8th destination that I went to. I also want to show you what the file structure looks like when you're actually looking through the File Explorer or the Finder if you're on a Mac, right? So this specific computer is a 3 hard drive system, and I highly recommend using a 3 hard drive system. A 3 hard drive system is where you have like a production drive, a software drive, and an archival drive. And I'll get into this a little bit more in detail soon, but just so you kind of see, my Lightroom catalogs follow 1, 2, 3, and 4, the 4 Lightroom catalogs that I have, follow the same exact path and structure on my File Explorer. Right, so we can go ahead and look at my Lightroom catalog number 4, September 2019 to the present. We'll look in the Sony A7 III folder. We can look at the Mexico folder, and we'll see here are those 5 time lapses that we just talked about. Everything is 0.1 TL, 0.1 TL, 4.4 TL, right? And that's not to get confused with, you know, I have in Muyil Temple as an example, I have really not that many, 9 images that I just shot for fun, for leisure. And then in 6.1 TL, this is where I have my 905, really that's going to be like 402, right? Plus the LRT file, plus all your XMP sidecar files. So it's like a 402 images in the sequence for that time lapse, right? So you generally want your Lightroom catalog to identically mirror your information in your File Explorer. Because if you don't do that, you can very easily lose files. It becomes very challenging to locate your information later on. Say if a client reached out and they wanted to license a clip from you, which has happened, and you don't want to lose those files because that's valuable to you. You know, you want access to your information and you want to keep your structures, your file systems, your organization in check. Otherwise, you're going to get lost later down the road. So to talk about the 3 file system, I want to touch on what I'm currently using, right? And I have, as my operating system and where I keep my software, right? I'm using just a standard solid state drive. They're very, very fast. They're very helpful. I can link everything that I'm using in the description below just to provide more information. No one is sponsoring this video. I just want to tell you guys what I'm using and how I very quickly and rapidly edit through my content. So I'm using an SSD, standard SSD, to house my software like Lightroom and LRTimelapse and the operating system and things like that. Kind of like the base files, maybe some miscellaneous documents. And then I have an HDD, which are mechanical spinning disk hard drives. they're not as expensive per gigabyte as an SSD. So this is where I choose, this is where I choose to store my mass information. I choose to store most of the data that I have on my HDD. You want to have your operating system and software SSD. If you want to have a very large HDD to house massive content, time lapses are massive. The rendered files that you get are massive. You want a lot of space to store them. And then I use an NVMe production drive, and this is where I edit and render my lapses, and this is where I edit my 4K video. And what's special about NVMe drives is they're very small. It's like a chip, maybe like, I don't know, that big, and it just plugs right into your motherboard. And they go 5 times faster than SSD drives. SSD drives, they're already super fast. So that's really cool that we can use these like microchips, basically, house 1 or 2 or 4 terabytes of storage on these chips. Like, these are those hard drives I just told you about. They're internal to my computer. My local disk, that is my SSD, my software and operating system drive. It's a terabyte. My archival drive, this is where all my content across my 4 different Lightroom catalogs live. It's a 10, I guess it's a 9 terabyte. It's advertised as a 10 terabyte drive. And then my production drive, it's a 1 terabyte NVMe drive that moves 5 times faster than your standard SSD. So we go ahead and click on archival. These are my 4 Lightroom catalog files, right? A couple other miscellaneous things like FPV and edited videos and things like that. But this is the bulk of the storage right here. And this is where the 4.2 terabytes of content lives, right? So I can look at, you know, this is the file structure. This is where my Lightroom catalogs point, right? So what I'm currently using is I'm using this 1 terabyte Samsung SSD. It's called an 860 EVO. I'm using this 10 terabyte Seagate Barracuda Pro, and I'm using this 1 terabyte Samsung 970 EVO Plus. And that I've found to be the best, most optimized workflow for my 3 hard drive system. When I was still operating on a laptop, it was a 2015 MacBook Pro, so it slowed down with all these documents. But my workflow was similar, but I was using the 256 gigabyte hard drive, the solid state drive internal on my MacBook. I had an external 8 terabyte G Technology G drive, or I had a bunch of smaller 1 terabyte Seagate, 2 terabyte Seagate hard drives, right? The spinning disk ones that are external. And then I also had a portable and external 1 terabyte Samsung T5, which was an additional SSD where I rendered video files and I rendered time lapses too. And implementing this, if there's one takeaway, implementing this 1 terabyte Samsung T5 really sped up that workflow when I was on a MacBook. I was still able to be mobile. I was on a MacBook. I was using older tech, but that faster hard drive was really helpful in speeding up my workflow. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. This is my way of doing it. If you have a better way or a suggestion, drop a comment below. Let me know about it, because I am storing so much information. I'm storing like 90,000 images across hundreds of different time-lapse sequences. I'm storing 160,000 photo and video creative files in total. And this is a system that works the best for me, and I'm hoping that it helps you too. If you liked the video, please feel free to drop a comment below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we will be pumping out more videos related to framework films, some short videos, some short films, and more tutorials. So keep your eyes peeled, and thanks a lot for watching.